Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here with me again. I'd like to dedicate this episode to the idea of the illusion or the blockages that prevent artists from breaking through, and how artists can actually achieve success in their fields outside the cliché of what a successful artist should look like. Now, many artists get, let's say, main roles in films, and that would be after sleeping with the producer or making special favors. Do you want to be like this? So fame and wealth are not necessarily an indication to a free artist with dignity and sovereignty. What I'm going to say now might be relevant also to non-artists, but I'm talking specifically about artists because most of my clients are artists, and I repeat this subject often when I talk to them. And I'll do my best to address this topic from different perspectives and for different fields, like fine arts and performance and music, etc., so it can be more graspable. I had my first encounter with this theme more than 10 years ago, especially while working with actors, because for actors, in order to be able to perform in a certain way, they need to acquire not only theoretical knowledge where they can communicate precisely with themselves and also with their colleagues, but also practical knowledge in order to understand what they are doing emotionally. The psychology, the relationships, the motives of the character, its objectives, its identities, progress, fears, desires, etc. And such work can be frustrating many times because it needs years of practice and the emotional world is invisible. So they would be digging in the dark until they open their emotional vision. And this is a journey that might last years of intensive practice. So sometimes when actors don't feel like walking this journey, but they want to be acknowledged and they want to be famous, so they start adopting wishful thinking, selling themselves illusions that being a successful artist doesn't need to acquire professional skills. They don't need to be the best of the best in order to achieve success. So sometimes they create stories or buy into stories that justify such way of thinking. A famous story they told me, yes, but there is an actress that never studied acting and she worked as a waitress in a restaurant, and one time a director was dining there, he saw her, he liked her, and he gave her a main role in a film. You see, you don't need to improve in order to get the job. All you need is luck. And they tell this story as if it was a fact that they witnessed with their own eyes. They have no direct access to that incident, and for sure, not to the full picture, but they talk about it with full conviction, as if it was the ultimate truth to base their life upon. But if it was right, it still has the lottery effect, which is a microscopic chance that it would happen. And based on that, they stop working on themselves or on their business, and they start working extra hours as waiters in restaurants, hoping that the director on the white horse, who would selflessly and unconditionally give them fame and wealth without they need to deserve it with competence or with favors. Now I'm talking here to artists that are passionate about their art. If one is in the business for the wrong reasons, this video might be misunderstood. I'm talking here only to artists who are in love, who are passionate about their art and aware of the message to deliver through it. The narratives like that of the waitress, those narratives are called PR narratives, public relations. They are used to sell a dream to the fan base, not to the professional community. Just like you have narratives about a little girl in Sweden who carried a couple of signs to save the climate, and a couple of months later, she's giving a speech in the UN. Yes, but she was sailing on a ship without fuel in order not to pollute the air. And if you do show them the name of the PR agency and the political agenda that hired them to create such narrative, not only that they would reject it, they would get angry with you for destroying their illusion. They don't really care about the environment as much as they care about buying into that specific narrative. Children all over Europe have demonstrated viciously in front of schools against the brain-stabbing tests in 2020 and 2021. Did you hear about them? Naive people can believe whatever they want. But professionals cannot afford wishful thinking and poor judgment and the absence of critical thinking. A singer that started recording music in her bedroom and filmed it there, and today she has millions of subscribers and a big label and management, etc. Now every aspiring singer who believes that would keep years trying to record in his bedroom or in her bedroom, unprofessionally, because she or he don't want to see the whole picture. It is easier to buy into the illusion. The PR agencies choose to tell such narratives because The last thing that the fan base want to think about is that this successful singer had a management who set a strategy of how to build her brand. It was planned since the beginning, when she was already recording in her bedroom. They've even used tools that only professionals can detect. On the surface, people might talk about her as a normal girl, just like them, who became a success story, just like this. They actively refuse to know the truth. They want to deny the truth. They want to buy into the illusion because the truth would turn them off. But professionals don't have the luxury to be turned off by the truth, unless they are too privileged. On the contrary, they must insist to pursue the truth. Think about people who consume prostitution. The last thing that they want to know or acknowledge during the act is that she's a professional prostitute or a professional dominatrix. The word professional here would turn them off. They want to buy into the illusion that she's their teacher, or their neighbor, or their boss, or their secretary, or their nurse, or a stranger that they met in a bar, or an exotic businesswoman, or their evil stepmom, but never remind them that this is only her profession, and she's just here playing a role. She might talk to her colleagues about the technicalities of the work, but with clients, she's only the story that they want to believe and the fantasy that they want to experience. Insist on the truth, and she's out of business. People want to believe that the doctors care about their health. It's a turn-off to know that they are actually here for the salary, that they are bound to contracts that they have with the hospital to write prescriptions that are in line with the contracts of the hospital with certain pharmaceutical companies. The doctors can talk among themselves about such contracts. They can talk among themselves about salaries and taxes, but the patients should keep living in the illusion that their doctors and their nurses are selfless angels who are here only for them. People want to believe that their politicians are leaders who save them from terrorism. But the last thing that they want to know is that all they care about is their careers. That they send their sons and daughters to die overseas in order to enrich the oil giants. That they waste the hard-working tax money on their decadent lifestyles. And if someone tells you, I know that, of course I know that, just mention the word terrorism and see how he goes back immediately in line like a sheep. So, I know that is only a superficial cliché that doesn't really mean that they really know that. Also, as artists, we need to know in which context we are in. Are we talking among colleagues, or we are talking to the fan base, or to clients? And if we confuse in which context we are in, this can lead to frustration and constant failure. Like painters who work for years on improving their painting skills, and wonder why galleries don't give them as much chance as they give someone who's much less skilled than them, portraying him or her in the media as the new thing, while his or her painting are below average even by consumer standards. They might have not heard, for example, about the relationship between fine art and money laundering. They can't even conceive what this means. I know what abstract art is and where it's necessary and relevant, not only in fine arts, but even in performance and in music, etc. Because in certain contexts, it might be necessary, but the way that it's being used to sell pieces of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, much of that is merely a fraud. But unfortunately, this fraud is very well disguised. So you see politicians and wealthy people and fine people celebrating an artist. And no one would ever think the size of that scam. That artist might be a family member of that clique, but even if he or she were an outsider, he or she don't need to be as skilled as much as they need to be loyal, to collect the bones while keeping their mouth shut. And those bones are worthy for them in exchange with their dignity and sovereignty and freedom and self-esteem. And if you look at their so-called paintings, which are objects under the guise of art, or sometimes charity, of course the storyteller / the PR agency would give them meanings that they don't have. Or they would sell concepts like art is subjective within their interpretation of what you see is your thing, in order not to evaluate the act of the painter splashing purposeless colors on the canvas without any mastery. That the painter is merely a proxy sponsored by politicians to help themselves and their friends get away with tax crimes. So eventually, the good painter, who is actually ethical and passionate about painting, he would find himself in a battle against a ghost that no one sees. They wonder why the galleries reject them despite their talent and their quality, why they set for them too many restrictions and conditions to frustrate the life out of them. But those same galleries turn to be too generous and loose and casual with another painter who's not as good. but he treats the gallery as if it was his living room. So the good painter keeps trying to play by the rules, keeps trying hard in a Sisyphic manner that leads to nowhere but more frustration and depression. And some keep doing that until the day they die. And after they die, a politician buys their pieces from their families because a dead artist is an artist without an ego and without resistances. So now they can do whatever they want with them. The same thing with performers and musicians who developed so much dependency on governmental institutions to hire them, or institutions related to networks that are extensions of the establishment, like political parties and academies, churches, many charity or non-profit organizations, and of course, theaters and culture institutions. So a musician who lives like a dog begging for a master to throw him a bone, is that an inspiring artist with a free spirit that is coming here to set humanity free of its spiritual chains? He himself is a slave of his own whims, to become desperately dependent on a master or on a sponsor, whether it's a politician or the church or a non-profit scam. Some would even be ready to compromise their dignity and go flirt with a corrupt politician or an abusive producer, or sleep with a director in order to make their way through. And even when they make it through, they still have to sustain that status. Is that the artist you want to be? And of course, some don't want to walk this path, so they go and organize their own concerts on their own, but they have no chance against the decadent entertainment productions that are funded by the taxes, because first, they don't have the financial advantage, and second, even when they try to replicate cheap versions of the entertainment pattern and still do what they think the audience expects from them, according to the criteria of the political sponsorship. So they try to sell entertainment that is both unauthentic and also financially poor. All that rather than channeling their thoughts and emotions authentically within the attainable resources. Now here is a hint what we can do to face all that. Let's remember that 20 years ago we didn't have what we have today. Me personally, 20 years ago, after finishing my studies, I had to run after managers of theaters and bars in order to put my shows on stage. Because without a stage, there's no space where the performer and the viewer could meet. Just like without a gallery, a painter could not expose his pieces to buyers. Just like without a shop, one could not sell. Because the seller and the buyer used to meet at the shop. So 20 years ago, I needed to find spaces to rehearse and put the play on stage, not to talk about marketing and public relations in order to bring audience and sell tickets. And at the end, we would pay the theater for the room, the sound man, the light man, the PR agency and the publications, flyers, posters, etc. I get nothing. The writer, the director and the performers get nothing, because that luxury was reserved only to the golden children of the politicians to work as directors and writers and artists, and yet have the ability to live in a big apartment with 2 cars and dogs and cats. We didn't have that luxury. The underdogs didn't have that luxury. All we had was our passion. However, 20 years later, we are living today in a place where free stages are set all over the internet. They can also attract audience from all over the world. Yet, many professional artists still don't get it. They smirk and say to me, "So you're a YouTuber now? So you're an influencer now?" As if the euro that I make buys less than the euro that they make. They see the artist who sleeps with the producer to get a job on TV more honorable than the one who performs on his own stages, accessing his fan base on his own, where he can sell tickets to all over the world and without needing to compromise his dignity. Of course, the tax-paid media and its golden children would love to portray the indigos / the independent going, to portray them as influencers or as YouTubers with all what that is supposed to mean, because the independent going is the real deal. Because people are forced to pay their taxes to finance the golden children and their tax-paid media. But when my audience choose to watch my videos and my content, and when they want to buy my services or my products, they pay by free will and with love. They're not forced to buy our content. You know what that means to the golden children? It reminds them that they are irrelevant. Not only despite their privileges, but because of their privileges. And today I'm so glad to have hundreds of videos directed and written and filmed, and some performed by me, whether on this channel or on other channels, or on channels of other artists that I worked with, like on the channel of Maria, where I strategize and direct the YouTube channel, and also I've produced and directed and filmed all the music videos there. This is a gigantic achievement for an artist that is not bound to the rules of the governmental institutions. And I'm saying this for those who are yet to conceive that shift. We are in a different world today. Fewer people watch TV nowadays. To many people, TV has become meaningless and boring, full of thousands of TV programs produced by governmental bureaucrats who produce that kind of content only for the sake of keeping and justifying their positions. No creativity, no inspiration. The film industry is decaying because of the gatekeepers that are funding it. But a new medium has risen that has more engagement and credibility for allowing authentic people who are not friends and families of politicians to allow them to be seen and show authenticity that has been missing on the corrupt tax-paid entertainment. So if you aspire to live in dignity and sovereignty and yet pursue your passion as an artist, this video is for you. That's right, that many social media platforms are also decaying for being used and abused by the golden children of the politics. But there are still many options and opportunities nowadays where an artist with some knowledge and vision can create a strategy where not only can practice your passion and make living out of it, but also live a life of honor, where you can deliver your messages and leave your mark. Now, there are many things that I mentioned here without diving too deep, but I left them here as seeds just in case you choose to make the research and find more details about them. Thank you everyone for staying with me. I hope I could shed some light on this. I'm Shredy Jabarin. Ciao.